I was 7 when my life veered off a cliff and I didn't even know it. My name's Colin Harper. I'm 27 now, living in a small apartment just outside St. Paul, Minnesota. I've got a job, a son, and a woman who somehow still loves me. From the outside, it probably looks like I'm doing all right. But inside, I'm still trying to crawl out of a basement my parents threw me into 20 years ago. Not a literal one. Worse. A mental one. A cage they called home. Back in first and second grade, I was flying, reading chapter books by myself, crushing math tests. Teachers told my mom I was one of the brightest in the school. I loved learning. I loved school. I felt like I was going somewhere, like I was being built into something. Then one Tuesday afternoon, right after recess, my mom showed up out of nowhere and signed me out early. I was excited. I thought we were getting ice cream or something. We weren't. We got in the car and she said, "Calm as a summer breeze. God told me it's time to bring you home. School's not where you belong anymore." I remember staring at her, thinking I misheard, but she just smiled and said, "From now on, you'll learn everything you need to know with us." That was the last day I ever stepped foot in a real classroom. At first, I believed her. I mean, I was 7. I didn't know how to doubt my own mother. I sat at the kitchen table the next morning, all dressed like I was still going to school, expecting some books or papers or a computer or something. But what I got instead was a Bible, a notepad, and a stack of memory verses. "Start with Genesis," my dad said, passing me a pencil. "Write down what you learn. We'll quiz you after lunch." That became my life. No math, no science, no writing except for copying scripture word for word. No friends, no recess, no explanations. Just because God said so. I asked once if we were ever going to do regular schoolwork. My mom's face turned stone cold. "Regular schoolwork?" she snapped. "You mean that secular garbage they poison kids with? Evolution? Gender confusion? You want that filth in your head?" I was 8. I didn't even know what half those words meant. For a while, I held on to the idea that maybe they were just trying to protect me, that they loved me too much to let the world touch me. But little by little, things didn't feel like love anymore. I wasn't allowed to go outside alone. I wasn't allowed to talk to the neighbor kids, even when they knocked on our door asking if I could play. My mom would say, "We don't associate with families who live in sin." I stopped asking. The house got quieter. My world got smaller. And the silence started feeling like a weight on my chest. Then came the breaking point. It was my 9th birthday. I remember that because I was finally brave enough to ask my dad for something. A math workbook. That's it. Just a little workbook. I even wrote it down on a piece of paper, like a little note, and left it on his Bible. I figured, maybe if I ask nicely, they'll see I'm serious, that I want to learn. That night, he stormed into my room. "Are you trying to bring evil into this house?" he said. "Is that what you want? You want numbers instead of God?" He tore the note in half and threw it in my face. Then he said something I still hear in my head when I close my eyes. "Math is the devil's language, and if you keep chasing it, you'll burn for it." I remember just sitting there, stunned, not crying, not screaming, just still. That was the first night I realized I was never going back. Not to school, not to normal, not to anything like the life I thought I was supposed to have. And that night, for the first time in my life, I tried to run. I didn't get far. I made it maybe 6 houses down the block before my bare feet went numb from the cold concrete. I had no plan, no jacket, no clue where to go. I just knew I couldn't sit in that house another night after what my dad said. Math is the devil's language. I was 9. My biggest act of rebellion was asking for a workbook. A neighbor spotted me wandering in my pajamas and called my parents. My mom came screeching around the corner in the family van like I'd committed a felony. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't even speak. Just dragged me into the car by the arm, buckled me in so tight I couldn't breathe, and drove home in silence. That night, they locked the door to my room. For weeks after, I wasn't allowed to close it again. That was the beginning of the lockdown. From then on, I couldn't go outside without one of them standing over me. No more trips to the store with Mom. No more casual visits to Grandma's. They said I wasn't spiritually safe to be out in the world. I was now a spiritual risk. That was their exact phrase. A 9-year-old. A risk. Every morning I'd sit at the kitchen table with a notebook and copy Bible verses until my hand cramped. I had to memorize them word for word, then recite them in front of both my parents at dinner. If I messed up, I'd have to start over. And if I cried, they'd say I was letting the devil in. Birthdays stopped. So did holidays, except the religious ones. Christmas wasn't about joy. It was about guilt, about how we were supposed to feel ashamed for ever wanting anything besides God. My 10th birthday came and went with nothing but a cold pancake and a muttered, "Thank the Lord you're still breathing." I wasn't allowed to ask questions. I wasn't allowed to disagree. I wasn't allowed to be. One day, when I was around 12, I found an old prepaid flip phone in the junk drawer. It had no service, but it connected to Wi-Fi. That stupid little phone became my entire universe. I'd hide it under my mattress during the day, and at night I'd slip it out, headphones on, listening to people talk on Discord. I didn't even speak, just listened. Hours and hours of people laughing, ranting, playing games, talking about school, breakups, annoying teachers, real things. I'd lie there, staring at the ceiling, thinking, this is what freedom sounds like. The weirdest part? I wasn't jealous. I was fascinated. These kids my age, they weren't smarter or better. They were just allowed to exist, allowed to fail, to mess up, to laugh without fear of being told they were going to hell for it. I remember once I heard someone say, "Dude, I failed math so bad my mom grounded me." I laughed out loud. Like, actually laughed. And then instantly froze. My heart pounded. I thought I'd woken someone up, that I was about to get caught. I shoved the phone under my pillow and stared at the door until sunrise. But I kept going. Night after night, I listened. Reddit threads, YouTube videos, podcasts, anything that made me feel like I was still human. It was the only education I had. Until one night, the battery died mid-call. I forgot to unplug it from the wall. The next morning, my dad walked in with the phone in his hand. He didn't yell, didn't hit me, just stared. Then he dropped it on the ground, took his boot, and crushed it under his heel. Slowly, like it was some kind of ritual. "You want to be a part of their world?" he said, eyes cold. "Fine. Next time you leave this house, it'll be in a coffin." I didn't respond. I couldn't. My throat closed up, and all I could do was nod. That was the day I stopped trying to escape. For the next 6 years, I went completely quiet. I didn't ask for anything. I didn't run. I didn't fight. I became what they wanted. Obedient, invisible, empty. Or at least I pretended to be. Because what they didn't know was that I had a backup phone hidden behind the paneling in the basement. And the second I turned 18, I used it to do something they never expected. Turning 18 didn't feel like freedom. It felt like an open door with barbed wire on the threshold. The morning of my birthday, my dad told me, "You're a man now. Time to start pulling your weight." That meant joining him on construction gigs and handing over my paychecks. "We're a family," he said. "We share everything." Translation: we control everything. But what they didn't know was that I'd been preparing for this day for 2 years. Ever since I stashed that backup phone in the basement wall, I'd been teaching myself how the outside world worked. Banking, IDs, job applications, rent. I watched YouTube videos on how to interview for jobs, how to open a checking account, how to not sound like a complete weirdo when talking to people. I applied for jobs in secret. I memorized bus routes. I made copies of my birth certificate when no one was looking. So when I got that text, "We'd love to have you come in for an interview tomorrow," I didn't even flinch. The next morning, I told my mom I was going to help Dad pick up supplies. Instead, I slipped out at 6:45 a.m., walked 2 miles to the Metro Transit stop, and sat there shaking like a leaf until the bus came. I got the job, a warehouse position. Nothing glamorous, but they paid $17.50 an hour, and they didn't care that I had no high school diploma. I started the following week. I didn't tell my parents for 3 months. I worked early shifts, got home before they did, hid my uniform in my backpack. I opened a checking account with my middle name to avoid detection. Every dollar I made went into a savings plan to get the hell out. The job itself was rough. Heavy lifting, long hours, noise and chaos I wasn't used to. But for the first time, I felt alive. Like I had a body again. Like I wasn't just a ghost in someone else's prison. The hardest part wasn't the labor. It was the people. I didn't know how to talk to anyone. Social stuff was a minefield. I'd freeze when people joked with me. I didn't get half the references. I faked smiles, laughed when others laughed, copied how they stood, nodded even when I didn't understand. I felt like I was impersonating a person, like some glitchy robot trying to blend in. But one person noticed. Her name was Rachel. She worked the same shift. Mid-20s, quick with her mouth, way too smart for that job. One day she caught me eating lunch in the break room alone and said, "You always look like you're trying to disappear. You okay?" I didn't know how to answer. She sat down anyway. For the next few weeks, she slowly chipped away at me. She'd ask little questions, offer help when I looked lost, show me how to fill out HR forms. The first person who talked to me like I was just a guy, not a freak or a project. One night, she invited me to grab burgers after work. I panicked and said no. Then I went home and cried for 2 hours because I wanted to say yes. That night, I made a decision. I was done hiding, done obeying. I was leaving. I found a tiny studio apartment downtown. Cracked ceiling, no AC, smelled like old coffee and cigarettes. But it was mine. I signed the lease under my own name, packed what I could, left a note on the kitchen table. "Don't look for me. I'm not your project anymore. Colin." I moved in the next day. For a moment, I felt unstoppable. Like I'd finally pulled off the heist of the century, stealing my life back. But the high didn't last. 2 weeks later, HR called me into the back office. They said someone had called the company, pretending to be my father, told them I was mentally unstable, that I'd forged my documents, that I was dangerous. They froze my paychecks and suspended me pending verification. I just sat there, holding my breath, trying not to lose it. Then the HR manager slid a piece of paper across the table. "You're gonna want to see this," she said. It was a printed email from my dad. It ended with one sentence that felt like a punch to the ribs. "If you keep him employed, you'll have blood on your hands. You don't just walk out of a prison like that and feel free." Even after I moved into that crappy studio apartment and cut off my parents, I still felt like I was being watched. Every creak in the hallway, every unknown number on my phone, it all made my stomach twist. That email my dad sent to my job, that wasn't just a threat. That was him telling me, "You'll never really get away." But I stayed. I pushed through. I proved I wasn't unstable. HR didn't fire me. Rachel vouched for me, told them everything. How I'd show up early, stay late, help others. "He's the most reliable guy here," she said. They kept me on. That was the first time in my life someone fought for me. About 6 months later, I met Emily. She was nothing like what I expected. Not flashy, not loud. Just calm. Gentle. She worked at a daycare nearby, and we met when I stopped at the same diner every Thursday morning before work. She noticed I always ordered the same thing. I noticed she always tipped too much. We started talking. Slow. Careful. No pressure. One night, she asked about my family. I told her the bare minimum. That I left home young. That it wasn't a safe place. That I was trying to figure things out. She didn't pry, just nodded and said, Well, I think you're doing pretty damn good for someone who raised himself. I could have cried right there. Things moved fast after that. She moved in with me the following year, and when we found out she was pregnant, I thought the panic would eat me alive. But she just held my hand and said, "We'll figure it out. Together." When Mason was born, I held him in the hospital room and something inside me cracked wide open. He looked so small, so untouched. And I swore right then that whatever happened to me would never happen to him. No isolation, no fear, no guilt for just existing. But that promise came with weight, because the more I tried to be a good dad, the more I realized how broken I still was. I'd freeze up when he cried. I'd overthink every bottle, every diaper. I'd hear my dad's voice in my head. "You're not ready. You'll screw this up." And then one afternoon, when Mason was about 2 months old, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, just my name in tight block handwriting. I opened it. Inside was a single page, typed. No greeting, no apology. You think running away makes you strong? You think playing house with some girl makes you a man? This world will chew you up and spit you out. When it does, don't come crawling back. There was no signature, but I didn't need one. Emily found me sitting on the floor, holding that letter like it was poison. She read it, didn't say a word, just grabbed her keys, walked out. I thought maybe she was done. But she came back 20 minutes later with a box from the drugstore. Inside was a prepaid legal packet, something called a cease and desist kit. She sat down next to me and said, "You're not going back. But we are going to finish this." Over the next week, she helped me put together everything. Copies of the email, screenshots of texts, the letter, even notes from my job HR department. Rachel wrote me a witness statement. I filed an official cease and desist against both my parents, citing harassment and workplace interference. But that wasn't the twist. The twist came when I filed a records request with the county clerk to verify something I'd always suspected but never had proof of. Turns out, they never filed any official homeschool paperwork. Not once. Not in 10 years. Which meant that, legally, I hadn't just been homeschooled poorly. I'd been denied a basic education altogether. And now, with the right documentation, I could report it. And that's exactly what I plan to do. It started with a phone call from the county education office. A soft-voiced woman named Marissa confirmed what I already knew deep down. "There's no homeschooling record under your name, Mr. Harper. Not for any year." That single sentence hit like a wrecking ball. For 10 years, my parents had lied to the state, to the church, to everyone around us. They didn't just fail me. They erased me. I filed a report. They connected me with an advocate. And suddenly, a chain of events started moving faster than I expected. Child Services opened an investigation, retroactive but serious. There was talk of fines, potential charges related to educational neglect, and even misuse of state benefits, since my mom had collected homeschool-related tax exemptions. But the real blow didn't land until 3 weeks later. I got a call from my cousin Sarah. She was crying. Apparently, someone from the county had contacted the church my parents still attended. A formal inquiry. Their pastor, one of the few people who still held them up like saints, stood in front of the congregation and read an official statement. "Diane and Rick Harper are currently under investigation for severe educational neglect, falsifying state documents, and endangering the welfare of a minor." The church turned on them. The same people who praised my mom's faith and called my dad a man of God were now whispering in corners, pulling their kids away from my parents at potlucks, freezing them out. Rick tried to hold his head high. Diane stopped showing up entirely. That's when I got the letter. No envelope. Just folded, slipped into the crack of my apartment door. It was her handwriting. I knew it instantly. "We only did what we thought was right. We didn't mean to hurt you. But if you think destroying us will fix you, go ahead. We'll pray for you." No apology, no accountability, just more guilt. I stood there holding the letter, hands shaking, and I swear I could feel 9-year-old me in the back of my mind, just staring, waiting, wanting something. Not revenge, not even justice, just truth. So I sat down that night and wrote my own letter. Not to them, to myself. I wrote everything I'd been too scared to say. That they failed me, that they broke me, that I've spent years patching holes they pretended didn't exist. I folded it up and sealed it in a box I keep in my closet. On top of the box, in black marker, Colin, age 7. That kid deserved better. And this was my way of telling him, you're not invisible anymore. Last month, Emily and I brought Mason to a park nearby. He's just learning to talk. He pointed at the swings and said, That. I pushed him for nearly an hour. Watched his little legs kick at the air, his laughter bouncing through the trees. And for the first time in my life, I felt peace. Not revenge, not anger. Just enough. My parents will never say sorry. They'll never admit what they did. But they don't have to. Because now the whole world knows. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Silence doesn't keep you safe. It just keeps you small. You don't have to forgive people who refuse to acknowledge your pain. Healing doesn't mean pretending it never happened. It means telling the truth, even when your voice shakes. If you've ever been through something like this, or are still clawing your way out, feel free to share it below. I'll be reading every word. And if my story hit close to home, maybe stick around. You're not alone here. We're learning how to breathe again. Together.